The bride was waiting beneath 10,000 white roses when Alexander Vale realized the woman he was supposed to marry possessed everything money could display and almost nothing his heart could trust. At 40, Alexander had become the kind of white billionaire newspapers described with words like untouchable. Vale International owned hotels, technology firms, and enough Manhattan real estate to place his name across half the skyline. Yet beneath the crystal chandeliers of St. Regis Grand Ballroom, Alexander felt strangely powerless. 300 guests waited. A string quartet played softly. At the end of the flower-lined aisle stood Celeste Harrington. Beautiful, elegant, born into one of America's wealthiest families. Her custom ivory gown shimmered beneath golden light, while diamonds circled her throat like frozen stars. Their wedding had been planned for 14 months. Their families had planned it for much longer. 2 minutes, Mr. Vale, the coordinator whispered. Alexander adjusted his cuff links. Then shouting erupted near the service entrance. A catering cart had overturned. Silver trays struck marble. Guests turned. A young black woman in a simple server's uniform dropped immediately to her knees beside an elderly dishwasher who had fallen. Mr. Henry, look at me. Her voice was calm. The older man appeared frightened, embarrassed more than injured. I ruined everything, Maya. You ruined nothing. A supervisor hurried toward them. Maya, get him out of sight before the ceremony starts. Alexander's expression changed. Maya looked up. He needs somewhere to sit. We have guests arriving. He is a person, not a problem. The words crossed the ballroom quietly. Alexander heard everyone. The supervisor lowered his voice. You need this job. Maya's dark brown eyes remained steady. And he needs help. She removed her apron, folded it beneath the elderly man's head, and called for the hotel medic. No cameras watched her. No wealthy guest applauded. She simply stayed beside him. Then Celeste appeared. Her expression tightened as she surveyed the overturned cart. Alexander, please tell them to handle this somewhere else. He looked at his bride. Someone fell, and professionals are dealing with it. Her eyes moved toward Maya. We have spent nearly $2 million making today perfect. Alexander stared at her. Across the room, Maya was holding Mr. Henry's trembling hand. $2 million. Perfect flowers. Perfect champagne. Perfect photographs. Yet the most beautiful thing in the ballroom was happening beside a broken catering cart. Maya glanced up. For one brief second, her eyes met Alexander's. She did not recognize him as the groom. She simply said, "Could you bring me that chair?" Alexander looked behind him. No one had given him an instruction like that in years. He picked up the chair. Celeste stared. Alexander. He carried it across the marble floor. Maya helped Mr. Henry sit. Thank you, she said. Nothing more. Alexander returned toward the aisle. The music had stopped. His father watched him with growing irritation. Celeste extended her hand. Can we please continue? Alexander looked at her diamond ring, then at Maya's abandoned apron on the floor. One woman had spent her entire life learning how to possess beautiful things. The other had just risked the little she had because another human being needed her. And suddenly Alexander understood why his chest felt so tight. The wedding coordinator opened the ballroom doors. Everyone rose. Celeste smiled. Alexander did not. Because seconds before he was supposed to promise his entire future, a poor black woman whose last name he did not even know had shown him something terrifying. There were qualities no inheritance could provide. No diamond could imitate. No billionaire could purchase. And Alexander Vale was beginning to wonder whether he was about to marry the richest woman in the room, while walking away from the one person who possessed what money could never buy. Alexander Vale had walked into the ballroom prepared to make a promise. 10 minutes later, he was standing in a service hallway wondering whether the greatest mistake of his life was waiting for him at the altar. Mr. Henry was fine. The hotel medic had confirmed it was exhaustion, not a serious emergency. Maya remained beside him anyway. You can go, the elderly man told her. They're going to fire you. Maya handed him a glass of water. Then I'll find another job. You need this one. I need you to stop arguing and drink. Alexander stood several feet away. Again, he found himself watching her. Not because she was beautiful, although she was. Her deep brown skin glowed beneath the hallway's warm lights, and her natural curls had escaped the neat style required by the catering company. But beauty was everywhere in Alexander's world. What held him, there was something else. She cared without calculating the cost. Mr. Vale. The wedding coordinator appeared behind him, pale with panic. Everyone is waiting. Alexander looked toward the ballroom doors. I know. Miss Harrington is asking for you. Of course she was. Alexander returned to the ceremony. Celeste stood beneath the roses, her smile preserved for the guests, even though anger burned behind her eyes. When he reached her, she whispered, "What are you doing?" Someone needed help. Someone always needs help, Alexander. The sentence stopped him. Celeste noticed. That isn't what I meant. But he had heard exactly what she meant. The officiant began speaking. Family, commitment, partnership. Alexander barely heard him. His mind remained in the service hallway. Then came the question. Alexander Vale, do you take Celeste Harrington? Wait. One word. The ballroom froze. Celeste's face emptied. Alexander looked at the woman he had known for 5 years. They had attended galas together, negotiated vacations around board meetings, chosen houses based on investment potential. Even their wedding guest list had been organized by influence. When had they last done something simply because it was kind? Alexander, Celeste whispered. I can't do this. A collective breath moved through the ballroom. His father stood. Son. Alexander ignored him. Celeste stared at him as if he had become a stranger. You're humiliating me. I'm sorry. Then say the vows. He looked at her. That was when certainty arrived. Quietly. Completely. No, Celeste stepped closer. This is because of that server? No, but her face hardened. She's nobody. Alexander's eyes changed. Don't. What could someone like her possibly have that I don't? The question hung beneath 10,000 white roses. Alexander thought of Maya kneeling beside Mr. Henry, her apron beneath his head, her job forgotten, her dignity intact. Then he looked at Celeste. She has what you'll never have. Silence. Celeste's lips parted. Alexander's voice remained low. She knows how to see people when there's nothing to gain from seeing them. He removed his wedding boutonniere and placed it beside the untouched rings. Then he walked away. Not toward Maya. Not toward another woman. Away from a future that had suddenly revealed itself as empty. Minutes later, Alexander reached the service hallway. Maya was gone. Only her folded apron remained on a chair. He picked it up. A small name tag was pinned to the fabric. Maya Bennett. Alexander stared at the name. Behind him, an entire billionaire wedding was collapsing. Ahead of him stood a woman who did not even know she had changed its course. And for the first time in Alexander Vale's life, losing something worth millions felt less frightening than discovering how close he had come to losing himself. By morning, Alexander Vale's abandoned wedding was worth more to the newspapers than most corporate mergers, and Maya Bennett had no idea she was becoming part of the headline. Alexander stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Manhattan office, watching rain blur the skyline. Behind him, 3 newspapers lay across his desk. Billionaire walks out at altar. Vale Harrington Union collapses. Who changed Alexander Vale's mind? His father entered without knocking. Richard Vale rarely needed permission. You embarrass Celeste, the Harrington family, and this company. Alexander remained facing the window. I ended a wedding. You damaged an alliance. There it was. Alliance. Not love. Richard placed a folder on the desk. The Harringtons are reconsidering 2 joint developments. Let them. His father stared at him. This is about that woman. Alexander turned. Her name is Maya Bennett. Richard's expression sharpened. You know her name? Alexander said nothing. That silence answered enough. Across Brooklyn, Maya was standing behind the counter of a neighborhood food pantry when her supervisor approached. You're famous. Maya frowned. That sounds dangerous. He placed a newspaper before her. A photograph showed Alexander leaving the ballroom alone. Beneath it, one paragraph mentioned an unidentified black catering worker who had assisted an elderly employee shortly before the ceremony collapsed. Maya's stomach tightened. No, you didn't do anything. I know. But she also knew how stories worked. People preferred scandal to truth. That afternoon, Alexander found her at the pantry. Maya saw him through the window and immediately stepped outside. You shouldn't be here. I wanted to explain. You abandoned your wedding. Yes. And somehow reporters are asking who I am. I never gave them your name. That doesn't mean they won't find it. Alexander stopped. He had expected anger. What he saw instead was concern. Not for herself. For the elderly volunteers inside. For the families who came there because they needed privacy more than publicity. I'm sorry, he said. Maya studied him. The apology sounded unfamiliar in his mouth. Why did you do it? Leave? Yes. Alexander looked toward the street. Because I realized I was about to promise my life to someone for reasons that had nothing to do with love. Maya crossed her arms. And you figured that out because I helped Mr. Henry? You reminded me of something. What? That character exists when nobody is watching. Maya's expression softened, but only slightly. Don't turn me into a symbol, Mr. Vale. Alexander. Mr. Vale. He almost smiled. She did not. I'm not some poor woman placed in your path to teach a billionaire how to become human. The words struck with surgical precision. I know. Do you? Alexander had no immediate answer. Maya continued. If your wedding was wrong, leaving was your decision. Own it. I do. Good. She turned toward the door. Alexander spoke before she entered. They suspended you. Maya stopped. I know. I can fix that. She looked back. There it was again. Power. Money. Influence. The language Alexander spoke most fluently. No, they treated you unfairly. Probably. Then let me help. Maya walked closer. If you want to help me, start by understanding that I don't need you to rearrange the world every time something hurts me. Alexander became still. What do you need? Maya glanced through the window at volunteers packing food for families. Then she pointed towards several boxes stacked beside the entrance. We're short 2 people today. Alexander looked at the boxes, then at his tailored charcoal suit. Maya raised an eyebrow. You asked. Slowly, Alexander removed his jacket. For the next hour, the man whose decisions moved millions of dollars carried canned vegetables into a Brooklyn pantry. No cameras watched. No board applauded. Maya barely spoke to him. Yet when Alexander finally left, his expensive shirt wrinkled and his hands dusty from cardboard, he felt strangely lighter. He had spent his entire life believing value came from what a man could control. Maya Bennett was beginning to teach him something far more difficult. Sometimes the first step toward becoming worthy of another person was learning that they had never asked to belong to you. The first crack in Alexander Vale's armor did not come from losing a billion-dollar alliance. It came from discovering that an ordinary afternoon could make him happier than everything he had built. 3 days later, Alexander returned to the Brooklyn pantry. Maya stared at him from behind a stack of grocery boxes. You're back. You sound disappointed. I'm surprised. Alexander removed his charcoal coat. I was told you're short on volunteers. You investigated us? I called the number on the door. Maya considered him. Improvement. She handed him a clipboard. Deliveries need sorting. For the next 2 hours, Alexander worked beside people who neither feared nor flattered him. A retired teacher corrected his labeling. A teenager ordered him to move canned soup. An elderly volunteer named Mrs. Cooper asked whether he was married. Maya nearly dropped a box. Alexander glanced at her. Recently unsuccessful. Mrs. Cooper nodded sympathetically. Maybe you picked the wrong woman. Maya disappeared into the pantry before Alexander could see her smile. Later, they carried grocery bags to an apartment building 3 blocks away. The elevator was broken. Alexander looked up the narrow staircase. 5 floors. Maya lifted 2 bags. Your billions can stay downstairs. By the 4th floor, Alexander was breathing harder than he wanted to admit. Maya laughed. You okay? Perfectly. You look betrayed by architecture. I own buildings with functioning elevators. That must be comforting. At apartment 5C, an elderly black woman opened the door. Her face brightened when she saw Maya. Baby, you came. Of course, Miss Ruth. Maya unpacked groceries while Alexander quietly repaired a loose kitchen chair leg. Nobody asked him to. Maya noticed anyway. On the walk back, her teasing disappeared. You didn't tell her who you were. She didn't ask. You usually walk into rooms where everyone knows. Yes. What does it feel like when they don't? Alexander thought about it. Peaceful. Maya looked at him differently. They stopped beside a small neighborhood park where late afternoon sunlight filtered through bare branches. Why do you work so much? Alexander asked. Rent. That's not the whole answer. Maya became quiet. My mother died when I was 23. Alexander waited. She worked 2 jobs and still volunteered every Sunday. I used to ask why she gave time away when we barely had enough for ourselves. Maya's eyes softened with memory. She told me, being poor doesn't mean you have nothing to give. Alexander felt the sentence settle somewhere deep. What did you want before all this? Nursing school. You stopped. My grandmother needed help. Tuition became impossible. His instinct arrived immediately. He could pay everything. Tuition, housing, medical expenses. One phone call. But he remembered her warning. So instead he asked, "Do you still want to go back?" Maya turned toward him. The surprise in her expression was almost invisible. "Yes." "Then I hope you do. Nothing more. No offer. No check. No rescue." Maya smiled. This time, it was different. Warmer. Earned. Alexander's phone vibrated. Celeste. He stared at the name. Maya noticed. "You should answer. She deserves closure. She deserves honesty." Alexander looked at her. "And what do you deserve?" Maya's expression became guarded. "That isn't your decision." "No," he slipped the phone back into his pocket. "I'm beginning to understand that." They continued walking. Their shoulders nearly touched, but neither closed the distance. For Alexander, it was a strangely powerful restraint. He had spent decades acquiring whatever he wanted. Companies, property, influence, access. But Maya Bennett was not something to acquire. If she ever allowed him into her life, he would have to arrive without ownership, without leverage, without entitlement. And as the Brooklyn sunset turned the windows around them gold, Alexander realized that for the first time, he did not want to win. He wanted to become worthy of being chosen. The moment Celeste Harrington realized Alexander was no longer confused was the moment heartbreak became something far more dangerous: humiliation. She arrived at Vail International shortly before noon. No appointment. No warning. Alexander's assistant tried to stop her, but Celeste walked directly into his office wearing an ivory suit, pearl earrings, and the engagement ring Alexander had never asked her to return. He stood behind his desk. "We need to talk." "Yes." Celeste closed the door. "For 5 years, I stood beside you. I know. I attended your dinners, protected your reputation, tolerated your father, rearranged my life around your company." Alexander's expression remained controlled. "And I'm grateful." "Grateful?" Her voice sharpened. "I was supposed to become your wife." Alexander walked toward the windows. "That's exactly the problem." "What does that mean?" "We kept talking about what we were supposed to become." He faced her. "I don't remember the last time we asked whether we were happy." Celeste stared at him. "This is because of Maya Bennett." "No, stop protecting her. I'm protecting the truth." Celeste laughed bitterly. "A poor catering worker appears at our wedding, and suddenly you discover morality?" Alexander's jaw tightened. "Don't speak about her like that." "There." Celeste heard it. "Not passion. Something worse. Respect. You love her." Alexander became silent. "I barely know her." "That wasn't my question." "No," he said quietly. "It wasn't." Celeste removed the engagement ring. For a moment, she simply held it. Then she placed it on his desk. "You will regret this." "Maybe. You're throwing away everything." Alexander looked at the diamond. "No. I'm finally questioning what everything means." Across Brooklyn, Maya was helping her grandmother prepare lunch when someone knocked. Maya opened the door. Celeste stood in the hallway. Maya's expression changed. "How did you find me?" "Money makes many things easy. That doesn't make them right." Celeste ignored the remark. "I came to offer you something." She removed an envelope from her handbag. Maya did not touch it. "What is it?" "Enough to finish nursing school. Enough to move your grandmother somewhere better. Enough to stop worrying about rent for years." Maya's eyes cooled. "And what do you want?" "Leave Alexander alone." Silence. Then Maya almost smiled. "You think I'm with him? I think you want to be. And you think this buys the answer you want. Everyone needs money." "That's true." Celeste seemed surprised. Maya continued. "But needing money doesn't mean I need yours. You're being foolish." "Maybe." Maya stepped closer. "But I can live with being poor." Her voice remained gentle. "I couldn't live with selling my self-respect." The elevator opened behind Celeste. Alexander stepped out. He had come to return a book Maya had left at the pantry. Instead, he saw the envelope. Celeste turned. Her face drained of color. Alexander understood immediately. "You followed her home?" "I was fixing what you destroyed." "No," his voice became colder. "You were trying to purchase her disappearance." Celeste's pride finally cracked. "What does she have that I don't?" Alexander looked at Maya. No designer clothes. No inheritance. No powerful surname. Yet she stood in that narrow hallway with more certainty than anyone he knew. He turned back to Celeste. "She has what you'll never have if you keep measuring people by what they cost." Celeste froze. "What?" Alexander's answer came quietly. "The ability to value someone who has nothing to offer you." Maya looked at him, but she did not smile. "Alexander." He turned. I don't need you to fight this battle for me. The word stopped him. Then he nodded. You're right. Maya faced Celeste herself and handed back the unopened envelope. I hope someday you understand that rejecting your money doesn't make me better than you. She paused. It just means my dignity isn't for sale. Then Maya closed the door. Alexander stood in the hallway beside the woman he had almost married. For once, neither wealth nor power could control what happened next. And strangely, that was exactly why Maya Bennett had become impossible for him to forget. Alexander Vale had always believed consequences were something money could soften. Then, for the first time, he chose a decision whose price could not be negotiated. By Monday morning, the abandoned wedding had become a financial crisis. Vale International's boardroom was silent when Alexander entered. 12 directors waited around the long walnut table. His father sat at the opposite end. Behind Richard Vale, a screen displayed the damage. Harrington Partnership suspended. 2 development projects frozen. Investors nervous. Millions already lost. Richard folded his hands. Sit down. Alexander remained standing. I'm comfortable. You humiliated Celeste publicly. I ended a marriage before it became a lie. You abandoned her at the altar. Alexander's expression tightened. I should have realized the truth sooner. That failure belongs to me. One director cleared his throat. The Harringtons will reopen negotiations if you issue a public apology. I'll apologize for the humiliation. Richard leaned forward. And the wedding? There will be no wedding. The room changed. Another director spoke. Then we may lose billions. Alexander looked around the table. Men who had praised his courage in business now seemed terrified because he had applied it to his own life. Richard's voice hardened. Is Maya Bennett worth billions? Alexander's eyes sharpened. This is not about purchasing one woman by rejecting another. Then what is it about? Becoming responsible for my own choices. Silence. Alexander buttoned his jacket. My private life is no longer a corporate asset. If you walk out, Richard warned, the board may question your leadership. Alexander met his father's gaze. Then let them. Across Brooklyn, Maya was discovering that Alexander's decision had consequences for her too. A photograph had appeared online. It showed Alexander outside her apartment building. The headline beneath it was cruelly simple. The woman behind the billionaire's abandoned wedding. Reporters gathered outside the pantry. One shouted, Maya, did Alexander leave Celeste for you? Another asked, how much money has he given you? Maya kept walking. Inside, her grandmother was waiting. You look angry, she said. I'm tired of strangers deciding what kind of woman I am. Her grandmother took her hand. Then don't let strangers become your mirror. That evening, Alexander arrived at the pantry. Maya met him outside. You can't keep coming here. He stopped. I wanted to make sure you were okay. I'm not. His face tightened. I can handle the reporters. No, Alexander caught himself. The familiar instinct. Fix. Control. Protect. He exhaled. What do you need? Distance. The answer hurt. Still, he nodded. For how long? I don't know. All right. Maya searched his face. You're not going to argue? You asked me to listen. For several seconds, the city moved around them while neither spoke. Then Maya said quietly, I didn't ask you to abandon your wedding. I know. I didn't ask you to lose business deals. I know. And I will not become the prize waiting at the end of your rebellion. Alexander absorbed every word. You're not. Then prove it. How? Maya's eyes softened, though her voice remained steady. Build a life you respect, even if I'm not in it. Alexander went still. No negotiation had ever frightened him more. Because she was asking for the one thing he could not perform for her. Change without reward. He nodded. I will. Then he walked away. Maya watched him disappear beneath the Brooklyn streetlights. He did not look back. And that was when something unexpected moved inside her. For weeks, Alexander had shown her how badly he wanted to remain near her. Tonight, he showed her something more meaningful. He respected her enough to leave. And perhaps that was where love truly began. Not when someone refused to lose you, but when they refused to possess you. The hardest promise Alexander Vale ever kept was the one that gave him no guarantee Maya Bennett would be waiting when he finished. 6 weeks passed. Alexander did not call her. He did not send flowers. He did not appear at the pantry carrying another excuse to see her. Instead, he went back to the life he had almost allowed other people to design, and began rebuilding it. At Vale International, the Harrington partnership officially collapsed. The financial loss was significant. Richard Vail called it unnecessary. Alexander accepted it without complaint. Then he did something that surprised the board even more. He reviewed the company's lowest-paid employee benefits: health coverage, emergency leave, education assistance. For years, Alexander had approved charitable donations worth millions while barely understanding the struggles of people working inside his own buildings. That contradiction no longer felt acceptable. "We already have a foundation," one director argued. Alexander looked across the table. "Charity outside our doors doesn't excuse indifference inside them." The room fell silent. He increased emergency family leave, expanded tuition assistance, created a hardship fund employees could access without public disclosure. There were no press releases, no photographs, no plaque bearing his name. When his communications director suggested announcing the programs, Alexander refused. "If helping people requires applause, we're doing it for the wrong reason." Across Brooklyn, Maya heard nothing about these changes. That mattered. She had returned to her ordinary rhythm: pantry shifts, catering work, evenings with her grandmother, and one unfinished dream. One afternoon, an envelope arrived from the nursing school she had attended years earlier. Maya sat at the kitchen table before opening it. Her grandmother watched quietly. Maya read the first sentence, then covered her mouth. "What?" "I got back in." Her grandmother smiled. Maya's eyes filled. The school had approved her re-entry with partial financial aid. It would be difficult. She would still need to work. She would have to count every dollar. But the path belonged to her. No billionaire had purchased it. That night, she thought about Alexander. Not his penthouse, not his company, not the wedding he had abandoned. She remembered him carrying grocery boxes, listening instead of solving, walking away when she asked. For the first time, she wondered what he had done with the distance she gave him. 3 days later, Maya entered Vail International. The marble lobby made her feel underdressed in her simple brown coat, but she kept walking. Alexander's assistant recognized her. His surprise was obvious. "He's in his office." Maya nodded. "Don't tell him I'm here." She opened the glass door herself. Alexander stood beside his desk reading a report. When he looked up, he froze. "Maya, you stayed away. You asked me to." "I know." He placed the report down. Neither moved closer. Then Maya noticed a document on his desk. Employee Education Assistance Expansion. She looked at him. "What's this?" Alexander hesitated. "Something overdue. You didn't tell me. It wasn't for you." Those 4 words changed something. Maya reached into her bag and handed him her nursing school letter. Alexander read it. His face slowly transformed. "You're going back." "Yes." A smile broke through his restraint. "I knew you would." "No," Maya said softly. "You hoped I would." Alexander looked at her. She stepped closer. "You did what I asked." "I tried. You built something you could respect." "I'm still building." Maya nodded. "So am I." For a moment, Manhattan disappeared beyond the windows. There was only the distance between them. Alexander did not reach for her. He had finally learned that wanting someone did not grant permission. So Maya crossed the final step herself. She took his hand. Alexander looked down at their joined fingers, then back into her eyes. No diamonds. No promises. No audience. Just choice. Freely given. Maya smiled. "Coffee." Alexander's eyes warmed. "Is this a date?" "It's coffee." "Understood." She started toward the door, then glanced back. "But if you behave yourself, billionaire, there might be a second cup." Alexander laughed and followed. For most of his life, every important door had opened because of his name. This one opened because he had finally learned to stand outside it without demanding entry. The true test of Alexander Vail's transformation came when Maya Bennett finally stepped into his world, and he refused to let that world decide what she was worth. For months later, Maya stood beneath the golden chandeliers of the Vail Foundation Winter Gala. The last time she had entered a ballroom this luxurious, she had been carrying champagne. Tonight, she carried nothing. No tray, no uniform, no apology for being there. She wore a deep sapphire blue gown, elegant but simple, her natural curls framing her face. Alexander waited near the entrance in a black tuxedo. When he saw her, he stopped speaking. Maya raised an eyebrow. "Billionaire." Alexander recovered slowly. "You look beautiful. That took you a while." "I temporarily lost access to language." She smiled. Then she noticed the room noticing her. Executives whispered. Socialites glanced twice. Several people recognized the woman newspapers had once blamed for Alexander's abandoned wedding. Maya's shoulders stiffened. Alexander offered his arm. She looked at it. He did not move closer. Her choice. Always her choice. Maya slipped her hand around his arm. Together, they entered. Near the stage stood Richard Vale. His expression remained difficult to read. Maya Bennett. Mr. Vale. Richard studied her. My son has become expensive since meeting you. Alexander nearly interrupted. Maya did not need him to. Then perhaps he should stop measuring every important decision in dollars. Richard blinked. Alexander hid a smile. For one brief second, the older man almost smiled too. Later, a reporter approached them. Mr. Vale, is it true Miss Bennett was the reason you abandoned Celeste Harrington at the altar? The surrounding conversations quieted. Months earlier, Alexander might have answered immediately. Instead, he looked at Maya. She understood the question in his eyes. Permission? Maya nodded. Alexander faced the reporter. No, the answer was firm. Maya did not end my wedding. I did. But you met her that day. Yes. And shortly afterward, you walked away. Alexander glanced toward Maya. She reminded me of something I had forgotten. What? That character matters most when there is nothing to gain. The reporter leaned closer. So she changed you? Alexander shook his head. She challenged me to change myself. Maya's eyes softened. There was the difference. He had not turned her into his rescuer. He had taken responsibility for becoming a better man. Across the ballroom, Richard heard every word. So did Celeste. She stood near the entrance in a silver gown, accompanied by friends. For a moment, her eyes met Alexander's. There was no anger left in his expression, only regret for the pain he had caused. He gave her a respectful nod. After a pause, Celeste returned it. No reconciliation. No humiliation. Just closure. Later, the orchestra began playing something slow. Alexander extended his hand toward Maya. Dance with me. I have an exam Monday. One dance. You negotiate everything. Occupational damage. Maya placed her hand in his. One. They moved beneath the chandeliers. Alexander's hand rested carefully at her waist. Around them glittered millions of dollars in diamonds, watches, silk, and champagne. Once, Alexander had believed this room represented success. Now he understood differently. Are you happy? Maya asked. He looked at her. It was the question nobody in his old life had thought important enough to ask. Yes. Why? Alexander smiled. Because for once, I'm not living a life designed to impress people watching from across the room. Maya's expression warmed. And what are you living for? Alexander gently tightened his hand around hers. Something real. The music continued. No announcement followed. No engagement ring appeared. Alexander had learned not to rush what money could not accelerate. And beneath the same kind of chandeliers where he had once abandoned a perfect wedding, the billionaire finally understood the difference between possessing everything and having something worth protecting. Alexander Vale had once abandoned a wedding because he finally understood what love was not. 1 year later, he returned to the same place because Maya Bennett had taught him what love could become. The grand ballroom looked almost unchanged. Crystal chandeliers, polished marble, golden light. But there were no reporters waiting outside. No corporate partners calculating the value of two families becoming one. No 10,000 white roses. Only people who mattered. Alexander stood near the service entrance where he had first seen Maya kneeling beside Mr. Henry. Beside him, the elderly dishwasher smiled. Nervous. Alexander adjusted his tie. Terrified. Good. Alexander laughed. Across Brooklyn, Maya had completed nursing school 3 weeks earlier. She had earned every examination, every exhausting clinical shift, every morning when quitting would have been easier. Alexander had attended her graduation. He sat beside her grandmother. No private ceremony. No giant donation. No attempt to attach his name to her achievement. When Maya crossed the stage, Alexander simply stood and applauded louder than anyone. Today, however, he had brought her back to the place where everything began. Maya entered wearing a simple cream dress. Her eyes narrowed playfully. You realize my history with this hotel is complicated. So is mine. That's an understatement. Alexander smiled. Then his expression softened. I wanted you to see something. He led her toward the ballroom. The doors opened. Inside stood volunteers from the pantry, employees from Vale International, Maya's grandmother, Richard Vale, and several families whose lives had touched theirs. No society photographers. No investors. Maya looked at Alexander. What is this? A celebration. For what? You. Her eyes immediately sharpened. Alexander. Not your struggle. He knew her well enough now. Your achievement. Maya became still. A banner near the stage read, "Congratulations, Nurse Bennett." Her grandmother wiped away tears. Maya looked back at Alexander. You remembered what I said? That your dreams belong to you? Yes. I remember everything you say. It's exhausting. She laughed through tears. Later, after everyone left, Alexander and Maya remained beneath the chandeliers. He led her to the exact place where the abandoned wedding altar had once stood. I spent most of my life thinking love meant finding someone who fit the future I had already designed. Maya listened. Then you walked into that future carrying a serving tray and ruined the entire theory. Technically, Mr. Henry did that. Please don't destroy my speech. She smiled. Alexander reached inside his jacket. This time, he held a small velvet box. Maya's breath caught. He opened it. A simple diamond ring rested inside. Beautiful. Elegant. Nothing designed for headlines. Alexander lowered himself onto one knee. Maya Bennett, you never needed my money, my name, or my permission to become extraordinary. Her eyes filled. You taught me that love is not rescue. It is respect. It is showing up. It is listening. It is choosing someone without trying to own them. His voice softened. I don't want you to enter my life. Maya blinked. Alexander smiled. I want us to build one that belongs equally to both of us. He looked into her eyes. Will you marry me? Maya let the silence remain for one beautiful second. Yes. Months later, their wedding took place at the Brooklyn Community Center. Mrs. Cooper arranged the flowers. Mr. Henry attended in his best suit. Richard sat beside Maya's grandmother. There were no billion-dollar agreements waiting to be signed afterward. Only vows. When Alexander looked at his wife, he finally understood the sentence that had changed his life. She had what money could never buy. Not beauty. Not poverty. Not sacrifice. Character. And Maya had taught a billionaire the most valuable lesson of all. The richest heart is not the one that possesses the most. It is the one that finally learns what should never have a price.